Welcome to Inside Roswell. This podcast is designed to give you, the citizens of Roswell, a closer look at how your city works through real conversations with people who serve your city and do the work every day. In each episode, we're going to talk about the projects, the programs, and the decisions that are shaping Roswell today and in the future, why they matter, and how they're going to impact you. This episode is part of our retreat series, where we share different perspectives on how the city plans for the future and works together. Today, I'm joined by Councilwoman Jennifer Philippi, who was just elected this past November and recently attended her first mayor and council retreat. I'm glad you're here, so let's get started. So this was your first mayor and council retreat as an elected official. What were your initial impressions walking into that experience?
Well, I kept hearing great things about the retreat, that I would have an opportunity for so many of the things to come together. But like walking into any new space with a lot of people you don't know, it was a little bit intimidating to start, but everyone was very welcoming. And so right away, I felt at home and just was really impressed with the structure and how well organized it was.
So, retreats are designed to help you get better understanding of how the city works and operates beyond what the public typically sees at council meetings and all the information. So what did you think? Did it help you?
Oh, for sure. There were so many things about it. Like the way the agenda was set up, where we got to hear from each department, really helped me understand how each of the departments work and getting a better idea of these long lead times that come before decisions are actually made or something is acted upon.
So with it, in one part of the retreat, as you said, was involved hearing directly from staff to help us understand better what they do, about their priorities and somewhat of how they do their work. So as a new council person, what stood out to you most about those presentations?
The depth and breadth of knowledge that the staff has. Each one of them seems so well-versed in their area of expertise, and the amount of understanding they have for each of the projects that they're working on, the goals that they're working on. They understand the history, how things came to be. It just really gives you a lot of confidence in the people that you have leading these different goals.
So again, as you said, it was a great experience, but was there anything about the retreat that actually surprised you or helped you shorten your learning curve as a newly elected official? Or did you already know everything they were talking about?
Oh, yeah, definitely didn't know everything they were talking about, for sure. Just in general, when you are part of the public versus seeing behind the scenes, there's a lot of ways that the facts or the information can be construed to be something a little different. Hearing philosophies of communication tactics that came before us versus what many of us think it should be now was interesting, and it helped me kind of put some pieces together of like, oh, I can see how this one thing became this whole other thing. And you can also see some ways to course correct that communication.
We spent a lot of dedicated times together. We went from 7:30 in the morning till about 8 o'clock at night.
Yes.
Had all of our meals together in groupings and actually worked through most of the meals when we were there. But with that dedicated time, do you feel it helped build some stronger relationships or open some doors for relationships with council members and with staff that you may or may not have known well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because at dinner or if we would take a break for a meal, you had a chance to get to know people on a personal level. In particular, I had a conversation with Chief Troch about community, the culture that he's building there at the fire station, and his philosophy of exceptional customer service, which I can really relate to. I also had an opportunity to talk to Councilmember Sells. He's expecting another grandchild, and there were some things going on. We were all kind of concerned about the weather And so it was just really nice to get to know people on a more personal level.
Yeah, in regards to the weather, we got lucky. We were kind of the weekend before we were able to get out before the really bad
I know.
stuff hit up there because it started raining and sleeting a little bit. But again, and the public usually only sees council at council meetings, although, or they may see us individually when we're out. But in that experience that we had at the retreat, did it help in any way shape your understanding of what your responsibilities are now in this new role you've taken on?
One, thank you for cutting the retreat a day short. So we did get out of there before the storm and cut our costs somewhat. That was a very, very good call. But it really helped me understand the process of things more. So since we didn't really have our liaison roles at that time, I wasn't necessarily connecting what I would be doing directly, but in general, overall, the process and the flow that things took in terms of when and how we get information, what went into it before the information was given to us, how that flows into committee meetings and then council meetings. And I mean, there's just so much thought and preparedness that goes into it before we're actually on the dais making those decisions.
So I'm sure you, like I have been, being asked, how is it drinking from the fire hose concept? Because there is a lot of information that comes when you step into these kinds of roles. But for the residents listening, do you feel, at the retreat, yes, we were still given a lot of information, but do you feel at least we tried to give it in more of a manageable form, and that you had enough time to ask some really in-depth questions and get some answers to some things, or at least start to understand and formulate questions? I mean,
the things that we would hear about from one department kind of led into another. And we had some foundational building. So I thought that was great. Yeah, and then we also got to take a deep dive into some of the bigger issues that are coming before us, or things that we're hearing about from the public. So we got to spend a lot of time on the fire stations, particularly fire station number 27. We got to spend some time on dredging. That's been a big topic, right? I really feel like there has been a great effort in giving us information in digestible pieces so that we can make good decisions for the city.
So with that, what we were able to do is we were literally brought up predominantly department directors.
Yeah.
And what I don't think people realize when, we did take it and decided to do this retreat in a slightly different model and who the presenters were. So I asked, as part of my role, I was able to ask that they are the ones that are presenting us the information, their projects, giving us what we needed as, institutional knowledge and history from their perspective. Others were bringing forward things that we kind of already knew, had heard, and that we were able to formulate those questions and really have those conversations. But do you think the staff felt comfortable answering our questions, or that they were,
Yeah,
that's a hard thing to do. They basically were given about 9 days to prepare all of the information you saw.
I was impressed with their ability to answer the question, but what I really picked up on is when we were going over goals. And so first we were given the opportunity to say what goals we felt we weren't aligned with, or what goals were missing. But when the staff was given that same opportunity, I felt like the items that they brought forward, I felt they were very authentic, and it made me believe that they felt safe enough to bring those items forward. And I was like, yeah, and they know, right? They were important things that they brought up.
I felt they were trying to help us come up with solutions.
Yes.
Or giving us options of solutions, understanding that it will always be council taking the votes, with some mayoral input, but that we get that information from the staff. But I don't know about you, but when I asked them, well, could you get me more information on this or that? I never felt a resistance to get me more information. Now, what they might bring back might not be what you thought you were going to hear either.
Right.
Have you had that or?
No, I do feel like they have been very receptive when we want more information on something. I feel like there were also a couple instances where we were able to talk through how necessary it was to spend a lot of time digging into something, like how might that change the outcome. And if it wasn't that impactful, I think we were all good about working together to not unnecessarily take up their time or divert them from existing priorities.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I agree with you. I thought that was interesting when, they presented us technically the priorities or the plan for 2026. We were able to say, we agree with basically 100%. We'd like more emphasis on this or that,
Yep.
and not that they weren't doing it, but that they are already thinking through plans for increasing communication. In other words, this podcast that we're going to do.
Right.
It was staff idea, to say, let's get out there and talk and give. I think when we were both on the campaign trail, we talked about ways in which we can definitely use multiple forms of communication to reach people, because everyone's going to be different in the way they absorb and get information. But to be honest and transparent to the best of our ability, to say, here's where we are, here's what we know. As soon as we can, we're going to tell you what we know. And here are some of the tough decisions that, coming into this, we have to make. And decisions we make now will always affect what goes forward. And that's what I think, I applaud all of you guys coming in and working together to do that. And one thing I found very interesting were most of the topics that were presented, council members overall were in agreement, but there were still ways in which people could say, well, what about this? And then another council member would go, well, what about this? But there was some honest discussions and debates.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get that feeling?
I did.
A lot too.
Yeah. And we were able to build on each other's ideas, right? So it was like, okay, maybe somebody would add this piece to the conversation. And like you're saying, when the other person comes in, they might be able to shift that to where it's a little bit more doable, or just massage the idea a bit. And that was one of the things I left with too, is that each one of us has our own unique skill set, if you will, right? And the way those skills can come together, I think are so valuable. I just found things that I appreciated about each person and what we can all bring to the table.
And what I saw too was when someone might have made one statement and then another person would speak and they were like, oh, I didn't think of that. And I think that to me is what these kinds of retreat, this kind of model, when we can do it and, have that true interaction among people, somewhat in a safe place, although we had a reporter and residents of Roswell there basically the entire time. So we weren't, we weren't in closure, as we would say.
Right.
And I felt that, again, even the staff got very comfortable saying, no, y'all are kind of wrong. Because, we're coming in. We don't have their experience.
Right.
Poor Sharon with construction. Okay, I know nothing about construction per se, but like you said, understanding the timeline of from when the council may vote on a funding and approval of a project, what all it takes to get that project completed. I think we don't understand that. It's kind of like you think, well, I'm going to remodel my house, so all I have to do is go pick the contract. I start picking out colors, and it happens in a few months.
Yeah.
Concepts.
Yeah.
It's not usually how this happens in this big of a world.
No.
So with everything you heard there at the retreat, and I'm going to ask this, was there anything we weren't able to discuss in that limited time period? Do you think it was too short? Understanding we are having a follow-up.
I really like the structure that you put together. I think that making that time together a little bit shorter and having the follow-up is going to be way more effective, right? Because you do start to get tired and kind of burnt out towards the end, and there's only so much you can take in. And now we have a chance to go away, kind of digest everything, and come back together.
Right.
And I always find it very valuable to at least sleep on something one night before making a big decision. So having the space in between, I think, is great. And that follow-up opportunity being here in Roswell where more citizens can participate.
Right. So, and again, and as we set it up too, so that while you learn what we learned, you still had that opportunity to even ask more questions so they could even bring more answers to us. Mm-hmm. Again, I was like you, very impressed with the team members who were able to answer probably close to 85-90% of our questions. When we were planning this, as I said, it's okay if you don't have the answers, because you're not used to the questions we're going to ask.
Right.
And we're kind of some of us are a new group. We're going to ask different questions that you're just not used to maybe someone asking you for an explanation, because I don't understand it all. I'm honest. I want to understand up to a certain point. With that being said, was there anything you would change the way we did it? You can be honest.
I think if we had, or you had chosen the location, it's a beautiful place. But it might have been a little bit more than we needed. I don't know if there's any backup documentation that could have been delivered with the agenda that might have given us a little bit of a head start. I know that we got the presentation material, and that's pretty high level and bulleted, right? I just thought it was really well done.
And we thought about it both ways,
yeah,
to be honest with you. And that's why we tried to make sure the agenda and at least the presentations were available to everyone before a couple of days before. When you do presentations, sometimes that background information is very difficult to put on a 10-slide.
Oh, for sure.
Without, and that's what I kind of like, that we had the presentations, we had the slides, but I think most of us we followed the slides, but it was hearing what was behind the slides, to me, was also very enlightening and very empowering, I think, for both staff, but also for council members to say, okay, now I kind of get where they might have been thinking that. And now I can maybe redirect or ask my question in a way that gives me what I'm really looking for, concept. So we did look at the concept of, would they post their notes? It's hard to do, as you know,
Sure.
the amount of information they were giving us. So it's always a balancing act. You've done large programs and presentations before to give out. Here's all the speaker's notes too. Can be very hard to balance. With that being said, would there be a better way to involve community? I mean, as I said, we had a reporter there. We were lucky, and we actually had community members come up both days. Now, day one, we were in closure, so that was literally closed. We didn't even have all staff members were not there. They were not.
Right.
They did not come in because we did have some issues. But we tried to make it as open as we could with the arrangements we were working under.
It is a long day, right? So I think even if we were local, it would be a lot to ask of people. I think having a summary of what we discussed, what, if any decisions were made, or what, just something digestible for people to take away and be like, okay, here's what happened.
Well, they're typing all that up now.
Good.
So
Good.
we had so much information.
There is. There's
it was that, and then we're pulling all that together. We've typed up all the flip charts. All that information is we've pulled, but we're putting it all together now. But again, it's making sure we get it all correct. We actually had 3 people there scribing most of everything that was said. We're not going to do it verbatim.
Yeah,
that's
a lot
great.
But
information to try to get that information to council to understand what we can. Here are some things that were talked about. ... Somewhat bullet points. Again, some of it is just some of the information is based off some, backup documentation. Which here's where you can go find it, because I don't know, some of the stuff even. Well, I know everyone's favorite topic right now about parking situation. There's we're looking at some information. A thing about that big. I've been reading through. I just got, I'm like, y'all are going to get it now. So,
great.
But it's to understand that. And again, I think once you lay a foundation, then you can build on it. That's why we kind of did not give out all notes and stuff. But
well, I would say 2 more things about that. One is for my company, we are having our annual strategy meeting starting tomorrow. And I took a lot of notes from the way this was done. And so it's improving me in my day job by kind of mirroring some of the things that we did. So I found it valuable just from an overall business perspective. And then when you're talking about the flip charts and things, I have to give Joe Panino a shout out because he had a way of like getting the right phrasing onto that chart that fully encompassed a thought. He even had to come and clarify with me at one point. He was like, that's a tall order, what you're asking. And I explained it a little bit more, and then he found the right words.
Right. And that's the whole, that was kind of that whole point. And when you do those kinds of things, it was, we go up and review. Is that really what I said?
Right.
Sometimes we might make things, and it's not quite what I wanted to get across. But,
yeah.
So as you look ahead right now, what's exciting you most about serving the community and being part of the work ahead?
Just that, serving the community. I mean, I tell my husband that I haven't felt like this alive with my brain this active in a long time. My job as the chief operating officer in my company is about solving problems every day. But I've been solving those same problems for a very long time. I mean, they might change color or size, but they're, pretty similar. To be exposed to all of these problems that we're faced with the city, to be able to help a person, so it's all about that. It's my own personal learning and growth, and it's what we can hopefully contribute to this city to make it a better place.
Thank you, because when we've kind of started this and the planning of the meeting, and Joe was wonderful, and again, I've done I was glad to see I hadn't totally lost my facilitation skill capabilities from my prior work, because I used to do, obviously that was my full-time job with the Heart Association and at Emory, where I would facilitate meetings of 300 people. Yeah. Mainly physicians. That same kind of model you saw, a little bit different, but we would have groupings, but it's that same thing to draw people to make sure we're going to solve all of, we need to have the information first, and then you look at open conversations about how do we solve the problems that are facing us, realistic, and to create win-win situations, because we want our residents to win. We want the city to win by being, secure, safe, all the things we know we are here in Roswell. So, Councilmember Philippi, thank you again for joining me today and for sharing your perspective as a new council person in Roswell and your willingness to serve our city. And to our listeners, thank you for spending time with us. Inside Roswell is all about transparency, trust, and helping you understand what makes your city works. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and we'll continue the conversation next time on Inside Roswell. Thank you.